You want healthy, glowing skin, but with all the products, trends, and conflicting advice, it's hard to know what actually works. I understand. I am Dr. Tina Meder, a former cardiologist and specialist in the skincare development and cosmetic safety expert. I've spent years studying the science of skin. Welcome to Meder Beauty podcast, where we uncover what really matters, break down the science, and give you real expert-backed skincare advice. Whether you're looking to achieve radiant, healthy skin, curious about anti-aging, or want to understand what's really in your product, you are in the right place. Rooted in science and the truth about what your skin actually needs, we'll have in-depth conversations with leading dermatologists, medical experts, and skincare brand founders to bring you the latest innovations, evidence-based insights, and industry secrets that truly make a difference. We are so happy you are here. So let's go. Welcome to our podcast, The Skin We Live In. And today I'll be speaking about the new aspect of the skin life. It sounds very scientific and even complicated, but actually it explains a lot of what we see in our skin every day. It calls epigenetic changes. Very possibly you heard about it, but it's really recent science, and shortly speaking, it will explain why we shouldn't say it is in my genes. Because actually epigenetic science explains why genes are not our destiny. At least it is not completely our destiny. Obviously, our genetic affects our life enormously. And our DNA defines a lot of things in our body and in our skin. But it can be changed. It can be adjusted and adapted by our environment. And the whole epigenetics is about how our environment, our lifestyle, our habits, and our skincare can gently change the way our genes behave, for the best or for the worst, without changing the DNA itself. There are a lot of metaphors helping to explain epigenetic changes, because epigenetic actually scientific concept and scientific idea is truly complicated. So you should know a lot about functioning of DNA and about genetics itself. But using metaphors, it comes handy for the explanation without diving into the deep of the genetic science. So, speaking about my new favorite hotel metaphor, when I'm speaking about the luxury hotel management as a skin agent management, I love it. And if you've been listening to the previous episode about active longevity versus anti-aging and about hallmarks of aging, probably you'll understand it better. If you didn't, please do it. But just shortly, I see the luxury hotel management as an active longevity way to explain how our body and our skin changes with age. Like cracks appears on the wall, not because just the painting was faulty, but because something happens into the wall. And speaking about all hallmarks of aging, we are speaking about epigenetic changes as well. And if DNA of our skin, it is kind of blueprints created before we've been born. And in these blueprints, we have all information which can be useful for our life. But as we never know what will happen to us during a lifetime, we get the whole resource of information, how we can adapt to the cold climate or hot climate, how we react to the stress, to the hunger, to the overfeeding, everything is there. But obviously, during the lifetime, we don't use everything. So our genes are adjusted by epigenetic changes. And it's like in the hotel, we have a lot of rooms in storages and equipment and everything what can be useful at some day of the life. But epigenetically, some equipment, they're still kept until the closed doors On some doors, we have these small signs, do not enter, and some storage, they are still dark, and probably we will never open them. So the metaphor about the epigenetic, probably the most scientifically accurate, it is the metaphor when we compare our DNA with giant hard drive. And this hard drive is full of data for everything which could happen to you and to your skin during the lifetime. And maybe this lifetime can be like 100 years. So we should have a lot of data prepared for it. But also we have different kind of applications, programs, everything we can use. So epigenetic is literally the setting on-off switches. When you need this up, the switches goes on. When you don't need it, the switches goes off. So our lifestyle affects our switches. And these sliders and everything what changes. And in fact, the environment decides what runs, when runs, how loud or how quiet, how fast or how slow. It is our epigenetic which runs the whole process of it. So it's literally the hard drive which will never change. You've been conceived and born with this hard drive, and even if you die in 120 years, you will die with exactly the same hard drive, probably a little bit damaged by the mutations, but more or less it will be the same. But epigenetic changes can bring a lot of changes with all these programs and apps and switched on and switch off. It can function very differently from exactly the same hard drive of your twin who been living different types of life. And actually, there are a lot of twin research which highlighted this power of epigenetic changes. So in this episode, I will be speaking about the twin research, about the powerful and tragic story from the history, Dutch hunter winter, and how it shows epigenetic changes across a lifetime and generations. Also, I will remind you how epigenetic changes now considered as one of the hallmarks of the aging, and we will discuss the examples of skincare ingredients which can be used to talk to our genes, and actually what leads us to the new perspective in the skincare. So let's start with epigenetic itself. When scientists say epigenetics, they mean some changes on our DNA which doesn't change the sequence of the amino acids in our DNA, so it doesn't change the structure. But it looks like chemical tags sticked and glued to our DNA, just downregulating or switching off some genes or upregulating, activating some genes. So we can not only switch on and switch off, we could also regulate the intensity of the gene's expression. So we can regulate not only then our fibroblast will produce collagen or not produce this collagen, but also how much of collagen our fibroblasts are able to produce. So we can silence the genes, we can activate the genes, and it includes things like DNA methylation. So when these amino acid DNA fragments are methylated, their activity is changed, histones modification, and change in the whole structures of chromatin. So you can think about them as notes on the margin of the genetic books. So you can see DNA as a hard drive, but also I heard some scientists comparing DNA with the Bible. So Bible contains a lot of informations and a lot of things which people see as useful and very helpful during a lifetime. But with methylation or chromatin structure changes, you just highlight some quotes which feels more actual to you during this time. Or you can put the note on the margin of your Bibles. Also, I like the metaphor about sprouts and the Christmas tree, which was created by amazing geneticists and scientists who've been one of the pioneers of the epigenetic, Alexander Weisserman from Ukraine. And he's been speaking about DNA as a sprout in the forest. But when you put Christmas ornament, it looks completely different. And what I really love about these metaphors, then it shows that you can change the ornaments. You can get differently looking sprout every Christmas. It can look poor, it can look luxurious, it can be bright, it can be dark, it can be very different only because of Christmas ornaments and Christmas toys. But if you take everything off, the sprouts are still there. So the key point, then our life changed our genetics. Our life affects our DNA. Everything what you do in the life, especially if you do it regularly, on the daily basis for some prolonged period of time, will affect your DNA. And it is only our choice how we affect our DNA, beneficially or wrongly. If it will accelerate our aging and increase the risk of skin conditions or health conditions or development of some illnesses, or it will reduce this risk. It will make our life easier and happier and healthier. And also the key point about epigenetic changes, these settings are very responsive. So your Christmas ornaments will respond to your nutrition, respond to your stress level, respond to the pollution in the area when you live, to the ultraviolet damage of your skin and body, to your sleep, and to your skincare. So your choice is very important. How the science discover the things like epigenetic? Actually, geneticists and scientists have been very skeptical about it. But two things change the approach and bring us to the understanding of the epigenetic which we have now. And first thing, it's very tragic page of the human history, the Second World War. At the end of the Second World War in Europe happens a tragic episode which is known until these days as the Dutch Hunger Winter. The Dutch Hunger Winter happened during the last months of the Second World War, starting in the late 44th, and it was during until victory of the Allies in the late spring on 45th. What leads to this hunger winter? Actually, the western part of the Netherlands at the end of 44th was still occupied by Nazi. And this part of the Netherlands experienced a severe famine because it was a German embargo for bringing food in the area. Transport lines had been destroyed. The winter was cold. And the harvest in the last year was very poor. So people found themselves suddenly living on 400, 600 calories a day. So 600 calories per day, it's a quarter of normal needs. And for about 6 months, the whole population of the West Netherlands lived in this unhuman condition. But in the East Netherlands, they didn't experience this. So tragically, it was some type of natural experiments that sometimes members of the same family, they've been splitted by this geography. And some members of the family been starving for half of the years, and other members of the family, they've been living relatively normal life, poor, but they've been not starving. So for epidemiologists, this became kind of natural experiment. And scientists very early after the war finished, the scientists seen the perspective to study how this hunger winter changed the life of people who experienced this inhuman condition for 6 months of their life. And later, they performed this retrospective research comparing children who were in the womb of women starving during the Dutch hunger winter with their brothers and sisters who were not experiencing this hunger in the womb. And scientists and doctors, they followed these children for decades. They followed their children, so grandchildren of women who've been living through Dutch hunger winter. And now they're still following the great-grandchildren. So what happened? The most thing what they discovered and what changed the perspective and what changed the concept of our viewing of the DNA was then mothers who've been exposed to the famine in late pregnancy time, so in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy. They gave birth to babies who've been born smaller, and this baby remained smaller during the whole their life if compared to the unexposed siblings. But what is very interesting, these babies, they've been small but very healthy. And many of them, they've been living healthy and very long life. They've been not in high risk of obesity. Almost none of them have been exposed to the overeating, and they suffered less from the cardiac diseases. But what happened to the baby who'd been exposed to the famine in the womb of these mothers in the early pregnancy, in the 1st trimester, was absolutely different. These babies, they've been born with a normal weight because at time of their birth, their mothers been out of the hunger already. They started to eat normally, so they took the weight, and the baby have been born normal or even bigger compared to their siblings and other baby compared before and after. But in adult, these children had much higher risk of obesity, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, heart attack, and diabetes. And their children inherited this trait from them. So it just showed them DNA can be changed by the change of the lifestyle condition. This natural experiment was very severe, but it proved then life of not only of children of the generation which was exposed to some lifestyle changes, but also for the next generation and maybe for the 3rd generation is still affected by these episodes. So why it is so important to us? It shows us then even short but intense environmental stress can be crucial and can define a lot in our life and in our health for our adult life and for the life of our children. And also it makes us rethink our environment and our lifestyle choices, because it's not only about us. It is about our children. It is about our grandchildren. It is about the next generations. Another much more positive examples of these epigenetic changes, it's phenomenon of acceleration. If you are about my age, you probably notice that young people became taller. I'm 53 years old, and believe me, when I started to travel as an educating beauticians, I've been traveling for almost 40 countries over the world. And I am tall, I'm Scandinavian. So in the early period of my career, I have a lot of photos when I am the tallest in the group. And sometimes I am like 10, 15, even 20 centimeters taller. So I look like a giant. But in the latest decade, photos changed. I didn't change. But the new generation of beauticians, because beauticians who are coming for training, most of them, they are young people. But young beauticians everywhere in the world, they became taller and became bigger. So now I am not looking like a giant. We are looking like people of the same size on the photo. And it's look really fun, but it's really showed us the phenomenon of acceleration, how it's happened. The nutrition and living conditions improved over the last century, if not all around the world, but in many countries over the world. So children eat better, children have a better health care, they are living easier life, they are working physically much less. The time when children started to work at the early age, it's gone. Even in my childhood, I've been bringing up in the USSR time in Estonia, and every one of my heritage probably remember how we've been sent to work in fields as young as 10, 11, 12 years old in the spring and in the fall for weeks. Now, it doesn't exist anymore. The adult people, machines, who are doing the harvesting and all this fields work. And part of it, it's simply better health, because children, they are just living in better condition. But part of it, it is the growing evidence, less of infections, better nutrition, less of stress, less of physical work, epigenetically tune growth and endocrine pathways. So children's body produce more of growth hormones. So bones can be longer, body can be bigger, and body can be stronger. So it just adjusted the body strategy. It's growing fast, it grows differently, and even the adolescence period starting earlier than it was for the previous generation. So epigenetic, it's not just a disease story. It is a story about the adaptation. Each new generation adapts to the new lifestyle condition. And why it is so important to think about twin research at the same time? Because you can say, okay, it's just a coincidence because it's just something changing in the air. It doesn't prove. Then DNA can be tuned adapting to the lifestyle. But also another point in the epigenetic science and the scientific proof of the epigenetic changes was found in the twin research. As you know, twins, if they are not absolutely similar, but they are very much looking alike most of the time, but also the lifestyle can be very similar as well. And in some twin research, researching and studying the life of separated twins showed them sometimes looks like magic, and it looks enigmatic, because people who've been separated at birth time and finding each other after many years, being growing up adults, just discover they've been marrying women who also look alike. They've had children at the same time of their life. They are working in the same industry. They are having the same car, and so on and so on. So somehow this DNA defines different aspects of their life. But also another study about twins showed that even twins living together, never separated in their life, their ways can split quite significantly. And if they absolutely look alike in the first years of their life, after they can change. The weight can be different, the character can be different, their lifestyle can be different, and they can get different illnesses, they can get different health conditions, and they can live different life, and their longevity can be different as well. So yes, DNA means a lot, but somehow even twins with exactly identical DNA, identical twins, epigenetic changes in their DNA can define different, if not destiny, but different life for them. So epigenetic alterations, they explain a lot in the individual characteristics of our body and how our body adapt and adjust to our lifestyle, to the environment. But in the same time, epigenetic alterations, they've seen as a hallmark of aging. So if we move to the skin, Epigenetic alteration is one of the primary hallmarks. So, as we call them, original troublemakers of the aging. This gradual drift in the DNA methylation, histone marks, and chromatin organization, we have more and more of them as we get older. It's like these Christmas ornaments are not taken off completely after the last Christmas. Every Christmas, something stays on the branch of our DNA sprout. And every year, we add new Christmas ornaments. So, in 40, 50, 60 years, we have a lot of them. And it can be less balanced. It can be not so harmonious as it was in our young age, when it looks like a concept, the whole idea of this year of the Christmas ornament and the Christmas tree. It becomes chaotic and it becomes disorganized. So, how it can affect the skin? This drift in all this methylation and histone changes, it shows up changes in the expression of proteins in our skin. So it's another hallmark, loss of proteostasis, when we have not only less of collagen and less of elastin produced by our body, but these proteins are not so well organized, they are defragmented, they are less functional, and sometimes they are just damaged, but they still in the skin, despite they are useless and non-functional. Same about the hyaluronic acid, which became less efficient. Hyaluronic acid, it's not only the matrix of our skin structure, but also it is a powerful antioxidant and powerful scavenger of the free radicals. And when it is affected by epigenetic changes, we have not only less of hyaluronic acid, but also hyaluronic acid, it changed, the quality of hyaluronic acid changed. Also, epigenetic changes can activate the expression of inflammatory genes and inflammatory mediators, so we have more of inflammation in our skin. It can affect the senescence, so the cellular aging, and we have these zombie cells destroying the environment instead of producing more of proteins, building the skin architectures. What is very interesting is that we have useful genes in our skin. These epigenetic regulators, which are very useful for maintaining the functionality and the useful organization of the skin structure. These epigenetic regulators, which maintain the useful skin structure and organization, and they can be seen as use regulators in our skin. They are called Sirtuins. They are specific enzymes which modify histones and other proteins and literally orchestrate DNA repair, antioxidant defenses, matrix remodeling, everything which needed to maintain functional our skin luxury hotel. So these Sirtuins, they are like very professional hotel manager, which hire new staff, send staff members to check this wiring and leaking pipes and repair the plumbing and to do all the necessary work for the hotel, including autophagy, housekeeping, and cleaning. When Sirtuins level is high, what happens in our young age, everything works perfectly. This orchestration is a symphony of the beautiful maintenance work and beautiful rebuilding work. But with an age, we have less and less of Sirtuins. The expression changes with an age. And when Sirtuin activity drops, we have more of oxidative damage, we have more of free radicals, less of antioxidant defense, faulty immunity, less of collagen production, and so on. And by the way, accelerated photoaging, accelerated faulty response to the ultraviolet, to the air pollution. So our skin produces more pigments in the unwanted places and our skin forms wrinkles. So we have all these integrative hallmarks leading to the visible signs of aging. So aging skin, it's not just about less collagen or more wrinkles or more dark spots. It's about the loss of the useful epigenetic patterns. So that's no point to stimulate cells directly, for example, using laser, just burn the skin inside. Because when cells epigenetic is aged, when you have less of sirtuins, when all this methylation of the DNA is aged wrong, all you can get with the stimulation is a wrong response. When you stimulate senescent cells, when you stimulate the tissue prominent epigenetic age-related changes, all you get is destruction. So first of all, we should address these primary hallmarks of aging, and we can address the epigenetic. How we can do it? There are a few examples. For example, glycerin. Glycerin is one of our very good old friends. A lot of people, a lot of skincare enthusiasts, they are very skeptical about glycerin because glycerin is so boring, it's old, it's non-expensive. And for the long time, it was seen like something just mildly hydrating the skin, creating this water-holding film on the skin surface. But it wasn't seen as an ingredient which is able to penetrate into the skin, and it doesn't. But it still interacts with skin cells because glycerin can imbibe the stratum corneum, the very superficial skin layer, and glycerin itself and its derivative, because when it's imbibed into the stratum corneum, it transforms itself to the shorter molecules, and it can interact with cells of superficial skin layer of the epidermis, to the cells called keratinocytes. And guess what? It can upregulate water-holding genes in the cells. These genes called Aquaporin channels, which create the special channels helping the water traveling from the skin surface into the deep skin layer. So genetically, it opens the door for the water to come and closes the door for the water to evaporate. Glycerin-based skincare, it's not only about superficial temporary effect. It is epigenetically active, so we are not only moisturizing skin from the outside. We ask cells to produce more of its own water channel. And it's very simple form, but it's epigenetic action. So we change the production of proteins, not rewriting the DNA, but changing the expression of these very small proteins. We have healthy moisturization of the skin. So it's epigenetic language which glycerin is able to speak. But it is not only about glycerin. For example, take hyaluronic acid. Also, bigger molecule of hyaluronic acid, the big native long-chain molecules, which molecular weight of these molecules is millions of Dalton. Actually, if you don't know what molecular weight of the skincare ingredient means, please listen to the episode how ingredients penetrates into the skin. The short story is small molecules penetrate into the skin easier than big molecules, but probably you guessed it already, right? And that's a rules and very small molecule with molecular weight until 500 Dalton, they could penetrate into the deep layers of the skin. Everything bigger cannot penetrate so deep, and big molecules like hyaluronic acid or glycerin, they stay on the surface because it's like 25,000 bigger than the size needed to be able to penetrate. But we are using the fragments of hyaluronic acid as well, called sodium hyaluronate. It's not so small as 500, but it can travel as glycerin through the stratum corneum, the most superficial skin layers, and it can interact with keratinocytes and also indirectly with fibroblasts, binding receptors called CD44 receptors in fibroblasts involved in the production of hyaluronic acid by cells. So that hybrid complexes, when we use long-chain and short-chain hyaluronic acid altogether in the skincare formulation are shown to be able to increase expression of genes involved into hyaluronic acid synthesis, but also into the synthesis of 4 types of collagen. All of them, they are characteristic for useful collagen. And elastin, it can upregulate genes involved in the skin hydration, in the protostasis and building the skin structure, and also it helps to repair the skin healing process, cells migration, tissue remodeling, so it can be used for the wound treatment as well. And it is used as a topical drug for the wound healing, for example, for burned skin. So, low molecular size hyaluronic acid is epigenetically active in the deep skin layer, helping to produce more of collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid and prevent the age-related senescence in skin cells. But long-chain hyaluronic acid stays on the surface but still speak epigenetically to skin cells, acting as a healer, helping to regenerate and calm down the inflammation of the skin. So hyaluronic acid in the skincare formulation, it is an epigenetically active ingredient. It is not only moisturizing, but it is an active longevity ingredient as well. It's not just plumping. It's really adjusting and tuning many genes in the skin. What are other ingredients? Obviously, peptides, they are small signaling molecules, and their role is, most of all, epigenetic activation and receptors binding. So peptides we are using to speak to each cell selectively. We have 9 different types of cells functioning in the skin, and we have more than 600 peptides registered for cosmetic use. And each of these peptides is more or less speaking to different genes in our skin. And we want them to upregulate, activate some gene expression, or downregulate to silence some genes. For example, we want to silence genes involved in the production of collagen-destroying enzymes, metalloproteinases, collagenases. But in the same time, we want to upregulate and activate the genes expression involved in the production of collagen. So the same cells will produce more of collagen and will destroy less of collagen, because our fibroblast cells in the dermis, they do both. And it's only epigenetic changes regulate the balance. You can switch it to the side when they destroy more, and your skin becomes thinner, you lose the elasticity of the skin. For example, during menopause, what is happening during the hormonal changes of the skin, because estrogens, they keep up collagen synthesis genes expression on the higher level, but we can regulate it with specific peptides. One of my favorite collagen boosters in peptides world, they are matrixyls. There are many peptides called matrixyls family. For example, palmitoyl pentapeptide 4, palmitoyl tripeptide 38. In Medar formulation, I use them in many products, including our anti-wrinkles treatment, Myofix, and Armolift biohacking for mature skin. In this matrixyl, they increase the collagen production, they increase the pro-collagen production, they regulate hyaluronic acid synthesis, and they are literally rejuvenating fibroblasts, but not stimulating them, only to speaking epigenetic language with fibroblasts. So they rebalance the skin, they prevent senescence of the skin epigenetically. So DNA is still the same, but we change the profile of the gene's expression in the level where epigenetic control is. Another great examples of the epigenetically active skincare ingredients are niacinamide and resveratrol. Niacinamide is well-known vitamin B3. It is a precursor of NAD+, which is very trendy molecule now, but by the way, on the margin. I still think that niacinamide is much better for topical formulation than NAD plus itself, because NAD plus itself, it works inside the skin cells. So it should penetrate into the skin cells from outside. If we are using this molecule directly, it's more fragile and it is too big to penetrate into the cell. But when we are using niacinamide, it is a precursor of the NAD+. So when it penetrates into the skin, and it is very small molecules, much less of size than 500 Dalton, it interacts with cells and it transforms itself to the NAD+, just injecting this NAD+ through the cell membrane naturally. So I still think it's much better, despite that NAD+ sounds very trendy. And why we are using niacinamide? And why niacinamide is so universal? Because for many years, scientists have been fascinated by the whole spectrum of the niacinamide effect. It is good for acne treatment, it is good for the dry skin because it promotes the production of ceramides in the skin, so it makes the skin oilier, but in the same time, it's good for that acne skin because it's very balanced. Also, it lightens skin. Also, it calms down the skin, but in the same time activates the microcirculation of the skin. So that's a whole rainbow of effects, and some of them looks a little bit contradictory. But in fact, niacinamide, it happened to be one of the very large epigenetic regulator. And it is biologically identical because vitamin B3 is one of the essential vitamins circulating in our body. So when you apply it on the skin topically, it interacts with all types of skin cells, regulating gene expressions all in the direction of the better maintenance of skin health. That's why it interacts with pigment cells, moderating the melanin synthesis, but in the same time it interacts with fibroblasts in the deep of the skin, helping them to produce more of collagen, and it's interacting with keratinocytes in the epidermis, superficial skin layer, helping them to produce more of skin lipids, ceramides for the skin mantle. So it's very large, improving many functions of the skin and doing it epigenetically. Resveratrol is also an epigenetic regulator, but is described most of the time as a sirtuin activator. By the way, niacinamide also activates sirtuin genes expression, so literally activating useful genes, promoting the active longevity of the skin, and reducing these hallmarks of aging, including primary hallmarks. Resveratrol is very much associated with the successful reducing of senescence in skin cells and promoting the expressions of genes involved in the skin resilience. So both of them, they are anti-aging antioxidants. So they are antioxidants, but in the same time, they are epigenetic helper to the skin to maintain the skin youth and skin health. But how do we know how ingredient works? We can test epigenetic activity of the skin. And actually in the lab, we have 3 different types of tests, which are all of them they're using now to study how all old and new ingredients interact with skin cells, because now we understand, then we should really understand how each of ingredients interacts with genes of our cells. If it interacts for good, okay, but we should understand it to create synergetic formulations, speaking to the same family of genes. But it can understand for the worst. So these ingredients should not be used on the daily basis. And now it's a new cleaning of the skincare ingredients library is coming because of these epigenetic tests. So we have in vitro test and in vivo test, and something in between. In vitro tests, when ingredients is used with a cell culture, So we take some cells, cross-culture, for example, different types of cells, or just one type of cells, and we expose it to some ingredients or to the formula, including many ingredients. And after we can measure the changes of gene expression using technologies such as sequencing and, for example, PCR testing after COVID pandemic. Then everyone heard about these types of technology because it was used for the diagnostic of virus, right? So same PCR, same sequencing is used for study the gene expression as well. Another test, it's ex vivo, so it's already the living subject, but it's still the explant of the skin. So we take the part of the human skin, not just the culture of cells, and we expose the skin explant to the ingredient or to the formula. And same thing, gene expression is studied with PCR and sequencing tests. And finally, clinical studies, in vivo studies, when we take the very much alive volunteers, they are using some products or just products contain some ingredients, they are applying it on the regular basis on the skin, so we could see some visual changes in the skin. We can use different type of instrumental diagnostic to study if the skin is better moisturized, if we have less of pigments on the skin. But also we can take the part of the skin, take biopsy, and to study the gene expression in the skin. Yes, it's much more difficult because volunteers doesn't like the idea of the incision of their skin because it is very small surgery, but still the surgery. But it's done, and so with combining these tests, we can understand really how ingredients or products interact with our genes. And you know what? All of them interact with our skin epigenetically. Literally everything you apply on your skin will act epigenetically, will change the behavior of your DNA. So you should be very strategic about what applying on your skin and understanding why you do it and how often you do it. And just a small advice, if something which you apply on the skin makes your skin feel uncomfortable, makes it red, makes it inflamed, makes it irritated, even if it leads to some positive visual changes in the skin, like skin looks more polished, you have less of wrinkles, it's never a good sign epigenetically. Don't expose your skin to the Dutch hunger winter. Work with your skin gentle. Work with your skin smarter than it. And also the last and recent part of the epigenetic alteration, it is a microbiome. As we found, then skin microbiome, so all the small microfriends, bacteria, fungi, viruses, which live with us symbiotically, which lives on our skin surface, and even into the deeper skin layers, they are producing some metabolite, like short-chain fatty acids. When they're produced by the gut microbiome, they travel into our bloodstream and can affect brain function, can affect our skin function. That's why it's so important what you are eating and the characteristic of the food which you choose. But also everything what you apply on the skin and microbiome of the skin also produces short-chain fatty acid, which penetrates into the skin deep layers, interacting with your skin cells epigenetically. So it's not only about the skincare, it's not only about your lifestyle, it is about your microbiome as well. So I see them as the team of like local coaches, gently whispering to our genes, turn down inflammation, turn up barrier function, let's produce more of collagen. Or opposite, if you have the unbalanced microbiome, when you have bacteria which are able to provoke the inflammation in the skin, they will epigenetically turn your genes for more inflammatory activity in the same time. So it is very important to maintain and regulate your microbiome, to keep your microbiome healthy and well-balanced. So all this science, it's not abstract. It can be very much applied to our daily life. Your choice of your lifestyle, your choice of the food, your choice of the physical activity, your choice of the location when you live, everything affects your genes. And everything affects the probably genes of the next generation. And we apply this science in the skincare. Actually, in Medr, the first epigenetically active product, we launched in 2017, when no one been speaking about it. But a couple of years ago, the last year, I've seen the advertisement of the very big corporate brand in the London Tube speaking about epigenetically active serum. And I was like, oh my God. In 2017, everyone told me that it is too complicated. And it sounds like some kind of random word speaking to the genes. And now look at us. We see the advertisement in the London Tube about it. And yes, we launched, it was our Blepharo-Rich eye cream. And we've been using the probiotic, able to regulate the expression of the genes, making the skin more resilient, making thicker epidermal junction in the skin, and helping to produce more of collagen. We still have Blepharo-Rich cream on the market. It's absolutely best-selling product. But now probably all of our products and all of our bioofficials, we understand how epigenetically active they are. And now formulating, I'm consciously using only ingredients which have been tested epigenetically. So we can understand how and what we whisper to our genes. So what you should remember, then our genes, it's not a fixed sentence. It defines our destiny, but it doesn't define our destiny in 100%. We can affect it. And we can change not only our life, we can make our skin happier and healthier, but we can help our children to get healthier and happier skin and to overcome this destiny like acne running in the family or early wrinkles or pigmentation or something else. So what we need is we need to use this knowledge responsibly with the full understanding what it brings us. I hope you enjoy the listening of these episodes. If you want to know more about epigenetical activity of some ingredients, please leave the comment, like, share, tell your friends about the Skin We Live In podcast, and stay tuned for more amazing science about the skincare. Thank you for joining us today on the Medr Beauty podcast. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an expert skincare tip. Have a question or topic you'd like for me to cover? Send me a message at podcast@medrbeauty.com and let's keep the conversation going. Also, you can visit medrbeauty.com and discover Medr skincare which I created. And if you enjoyed the show, I'd love if you left a review. It helps others find the podcast and keeps us growing. Until next time, stay healthy, stay glowing, and take care of your skin.